Hello, everyone, and welcome to our review of AEW All In London 2023. This was a huge event. If the number is to be believed, the highest paid attendance in wrestling history, which many people are disputing, but I don't have time for that petty argument. The fact that a startup company achieved it is worth talking about regardless. And more importantly, for this review, the man I'm right next to went to the event physically, in person.
I was there at Wembley Stadium for All In. Fucking crazy.
Yep.
It's now been 24 hours since. Actually, no, the main event would be going on right now as we're filming this, and I am still exhausted. I had a whole day of work, and I'm still fucking exhausted.
Yep. So yeah, I guess this will be interesting because I watched it on Fight, and you went to it, so our experiences will be slightly different.
Yeah, I'll have a lot of questions about a couple of stuff because I just won't have the knowledge on a couple of things. Because going there live is a very different experience.
You can't hear the commentators if you go live. That's the biggest thing.
Can't hear can't hear commentators. Can't see every part of the action in detail in the ring, unless you're obviously looking at the screen. But I was always looking back and forth as much as I could during the matches.
Yeah, well, because you weren't like super far away, but you were far away enough to where it would be a little bit. Especially with the entrances. Yeah. You seem to be quite blocked when it came to the entrances.
I could see them coming to the ring, probably down the aisles, probably when it was a bit more obscure.
Yeah, I mean, I think your view looked worse when filming it on your phone than it would be with your eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say that Taz was having a good old time on commentary. He was a great laugh. So that's something.
I heard
you did
Jim Ross was like especially not good on the show.
He was very salty. He wasn't he wasn't on many matches. He was only on a few, but yeah, he was quite salty.
That's interesting.
And there's a few times I'm just like, oh, come on, Granddad, just pipe it down. But the majority of the show had Nigel McGuinness and Taz and Excalibur. And Nigel and Taz were just absolutely sensational.
So I imagine they would be, yeah.
Yeah, although you did get one bit with Nigel McGuinness when he announced the attendance.
Yes, he did. There was it felt very much like a WWE move, strangely, even though like he's like a very big thing. It is, because 81,000 people is
one of my favorite things. My favorite quotes from the media scrum was what MJF said about AEW's locker room when he was talking about how this is a bunch of misfits and weirdos, but somehow they come together and make the best shows despite the fact that they don't always get along. So to sort of what I was going to say is that it's so fitting that when you had WrestleMania 32, which was the highest attended WWE event for paid attendance, even though the number they gave was bullshit, they had The Rock announce it, which is like the ultimate WWE move. Whereas AEW, when they did theirs, they had Nigel McGuinness announce it, which is like it's like the polar opposite in the wrestling world in terms of like fame. But it kind of just shows the difference in sort of what's important to them. Because like for WWE, it's like, oh, The Rock is announcing it because he's the biggest star. Whereas with Nigel McGuinness, it's he is significant to this part of the world within wrestling, even though he was only his most famous work. I mean, I guess he was Desmond Wolfe in TNA, but no one ever talks about that. But his most famous work was in Ring of Honor, which was tiny crowds and, you know, audio that would peak for the commentary and all that. But I just found that interesting, that sort of difference. And speaking of differences, I feel like the pomp and circumstance was very different to what you would expect from, like, say, a WrestleMania. It was a lot more minimal, and I also would say that there was no mucking around on this show. It was all just like, just get on with it. They didn't mess around with like too many extra things. I mean, I guess there was the entrances, but I feel like that's actually a good thing that they did special entrances. But often when you get a big, like a WrestleMania show, they tend to add all these extra bits on, and a lot of people find that weird. Like, you know, random musical acts and a bunch of like really excessive advertising and all that crap, and like just a bunch of random matches. Like, remember at WrestleMania 39 they had the 2 Miz matches. You get a lot of that stuff, whereas with this show, despite the fact that including the 0 hour it was 5 hours long, but even on the main card it was 4, it was just here's the entrances, here's a match, then video package, then entrances, then another match, and it was just like very, very just like bang, 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 bang. And the only real
it very much felt like that.
The only real stop they did was to have Nigel announce the attendance, and even that was
which was with 2 matches left on the card.
And even that, he didn't come out and set his name on fire and do a big pose or anything. He just got in the ring and said it, and then got it over and done with, went back to commentary, and then instantly to the next match. It was very well paced.
No, it really was, actually. I only really felt like it was starting to get a bit long by the trios match near the end, and then after that it was the main event. So
I think probably for you it was a bit more exhausting because you were there.
I didn't get exhausted until like the Acclaim match, I will say. That's the only time where I felt like, okay, I'm probably ready for the main event now. Because I totally forgot about the trios match in general. Because I was thinking before the match before, I was like, all right, then after this, it's the main event. Yeah, it's I don't know what time it was because I had my phone off, but I was like, oh, okay, we'll get it in there. And then it was like, oh, wait, no, the House of Black Acclaim match. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were out in the stadium in the cold night yelling and screaming, whereas I was in my comfy bedroom with my blanket on at like 3 in the morning.
It wasn't actually that cold. It was windy. It wasn't cold. I wasn't
That's
cold,
true.
really. I didn't even. I had my jacket with me, but this jacket that I have behind me, I didn't actually have it on for the whole show.
I forgot that you Brits are genetically acclimatized to that temperature anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't like blazing hot, thankfully, but it wasn't cold. The wind helped, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. I forgot that it's summer over there.
Yeah, it is summer. It's very much summer over here. Even though the day, like this week especially, well, last week technically, it's been pissing down with rain every other day, and on Saturday it was absolutely pissing down. So there was a big worry that hopefully Sunday it doesn't rain, and it only did briefly around like 1-ish, like spitting wasn't bad, and then it didn't rain for the entire event, which was.
I mean, thankfully, majority of Wembley has a big roof over it.
Yes, thank God.
Yeah, and they had a big sort of veranda over the ring, which was a smart idea. I did have to wake up, weird timing for it. I had to wake up at like 3 a.m. and the stuff started at 4 a.m. and ended at 9. So it was a strange time of day for me to be watching it. But as someone who was sitting comfortably in my bedroom with, you know, just the absolute king's treatment, I didn't find the show tiring at all. I actually think it zoomed by, and once we got to like the second to last match, which was that match you just talked about, I was like, holy shit, it's nearly over. I was like, what? I couldn't believe how it just completely zoomed by. I was like, hang on, I don't want this to end. I'm having fun. Which is a testament, because I've been watching it for over 5 hours. I've been watching it since the Powerhouse Hobbs Miro segment, which happened before the 0 hour. So, you know, I've been watching it for
happened before the last hour, because the pre-show was 2 hours, actually, as I learned when I came home.
Yeah,
but
well, when someone says...
It's like they actually had, like, big show and Renee Paquette doing pre-show stuff that no one ever cares about in any kind of show like this.
It was also Kip Sabian and Anthony Ogogo because they're British.
Yes, I did think. I was like, is that Anthony Ogogo? I don't recognize it because his hair, he's shaved down his hair, seemingly. I don't remember him having that hairstyle, so I couldn't really recognize him.
Yeah, but it was a very entertaining show to watch on TV. I'll say that much. And you got you got some fucking sick pyro.
Yeah, it was pretty good pyro. Wasn't WWE levels of pyro, but that was some really cool pyro.
Yeah.
For the show, especially during when the sun went down. I think when the sun went down is where the atmosphere really picked up in terms of those kind of matches. Because it was dark, the lighting was used a lot more. It was so pretty fucking cool.
On TV, the problem with the pyro is I couldn't really hear it. I could only see it.
It wasn't really like there wasn't a lot of sound to the pyro. It was.
I suppose what they didn't want to kayfabe it because I think WWE adds sound effects to the pyro. That's not even part of it.
I imagine they do I imagine there are some bits they do. Remember
when they had that phase where they wouldn't even have the visual pyro? They just play the fake pyro sound. They just pipe in pyro sound. It was a spectacle in its own right, but it wasn't massive. I think there's probably a few reasons for that. Number one, I think I heard Triple H say during the Money in the Bank press conference something about how difficult it is to transport large things that far overseas on planes. And that would probably explain why the staging wasn't massive. Like, it was cool, like, the design was cool with the whole, like, Willy Wonka's door thing they did. That was awesome. But they didn't do, like, a massive stage like they usually do for WrestleMania. And I also think the other reason is they didn't want to obstruct view from the fans who are behind it, which I think was also a nice idea.
Yeah. And that's the thing, if they have a larger stage, that means there'll be less seats as well.
Yeah, so I think they actually made the right move. I think by going for a smaller stage that has a cool design, it fit what they were trying to go for. And I think
it fit Wembley quite well. I think it fit the Wembley setting, I think, quite well, to be honest. It felt very boxing-like, especially near the end of the show when it was pitch black. And yeah, I think for the aesthetic and the atmosphere for that, especially for the main event and the women's match especially, in terms of how they were presented like that, it was very atmospheric and really cool.
I will say I think one of the best uses of the stage was the fact that they could fit people on top of it. So when Fozzy played their song on top of the stage, that actually looked quite cool. A bit like it reminded me a bit of WrestleMania 22 when POD played Rey Mysterio's song on top of that big building. But yeah, I definitely they didn't go too extravagant with the lighting either, like crowd lighting. I think they just sort of let it be a bit more natural, which again gave it that boxing feel.
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was mostly white lighting across the crowd.
AEW tends to be quite minimalist with its lighting most of the time anyway. They don't go to they don't spend a lot of money on that. And I think again it's this sort of stripped back feel that they usually go for. It's maybe not quite as gritty as it was near the start of the company because they don't have as much of the metallic sort of thing going on that they used to have, but it still feels different. And I think, actually, to be honest, if it was too much like a WrestleMania, I think people would be making too many comparisons. I mean, they already are with the attendance figures, which is just nonsense. It's still an impressive number regardless of what it's compared to. But I think it was a fitting, it was a fitting setup that they did. And that you didn't have any stupid like palm trees or big lights obstructing the fans from seeing the ring.
No, there wasn't any stupid like big red buses or phone boxes.
Yeah, imagine if you're like trying to watch a match and you just got Big Ben right in front of you. and you have to like peer
Mm.
around it. It definitely had a, well, like you said, like a boxing feel to it, which I think is
Yeah, it did.
definitely the kind of thing that Tony Khan would go for because he loves sports. And I think again that's good for the alternative because he's aware that, you know, the Fed, especially Vince McMahon's vision, like they want WWE shows to feel like a Hollywood, you know, film, whereas this is more like a sport atmosphere. So it's got a whole different thing going for it.
I think this was a very, very fun show. I think start to finish, it was very much what I hoped it be in terms of just the atmosphere and the sort of quality of matches. I couldn't really ask for anything more other than a couple things here and there, like maybe another women's match, maybe turning one match into a singles match. There was a lack of singles matches on this show. It very much comes across that we're just trying to get everybody on the show.
That's probably what they weren't trying to get everyone on the show, given they only had one women's match, but in terms of men, yes, they were trying to get everyone on the show.
They're trying to get, yeah, it's...
Yeah, I mean,
But that's the thing. There's only there being only 3 singles matches. It can come across as a bit chaotic for some people with the amount of tag matches there were.
This is the thing, though, is that AEW's roster is just so fucking massive, plus all the international stars as well. And it's, I think Tony was just trying to do what the original All In did by just bringing in as many big names as possible. Whereas I think All Out will have more singles matches for sure, because it's more of this is focused on specifically like grudge match storylines, whereas a lot of this card was just featured big matches full of lots of, you know, stars, I guess. It's more like an attraction event as opposed to, I mean, it was based on feuds, but I think there was more matches on this card compared to normal pay-per-views that had less grudge feuds, if that makes sense. There was some though. It was a mix, I guess. It was a mix of some grudge feuds and some attraction shows. One match in particular was more of a grudge feud until it was changed about a week ago, but we'll get into that. I mean, they, again, like, think about the fact that Bryan Danielson, Pac, and Jamie Hayter weren't on this show.
Yeah, I'd imagine
all 3 of them would have been
the
on
women's
it at the
four-way
knowledge.
wouldn't have happened. The women's four-way would have been replaced with Jamie Hayter versus Saraya.
Probably.
But it makes sense to just have that be a singles match, really. Danielson probably would have faced
Omega.
Most likely.
He was going to face Omega, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might have done, say, like Hangman versus Jay White in a match.
Yeah, and I probably would have preferred that. But, obviously, injuries, yeah. But I still think, though, in terms of... I think it's just a lot of tag matches and a lot of singles matches. I think that, especially, like, when you can look at, I would say, the best matches on the show, the top 3, 2 of them are the singles matches.
Yeah. Although, this was not akin to something like WrestleMania 2000, where the only singles match was the Cat versus Terry Runnels. It was a fucking mess of multi-man matches, and the only good one was the ladder match with the tag teams. Shall we start talking about the actual meat of the show itself?
I guess we should.
Yes. So we had a contract signing with Miro and Powerhouse Hobbs for All Out, with a bunch of security guards, and Simon Miller was there.
He was. I didn't even notice he was there. Like, he was obviously on screen, but I wasn't looking at the screen. I was looking at Hobbs in the... You know, it was really funny. A bunch of people we heard from where we were sitting, like, we heard like a bunch of people near the ring trying like Hobbs. Then the people next to me was like, oh, they're probably just showing because it's a big black guy in the ring. But then they was like, I'd imagine it would actually be Hobbs, and then turned out to be, and they were laughing to themselves like, oh. I don't know why they didn't think it'd be Hobbs when it clearly was Hobbs.
That's very strange. That's quite embarrassing.
Very
actually.
strange. Yeah, it was. It was like, not only could I tell it was Hobbs in the ring, why the fuck would the people charting near the ring start charting Hobbs? It's very strange. It was very strange.
That's a
You know, it was
brain
also
fart.
funny. A couple, it's a bit of a brain fart from them. It was. I just sat there like, I think it's very clearly Hobbs. But it's funny. There's a couple of people in front of us, through rows down. One of them was dressed as Grandmaster Sexy, and the other was Scotty Too Hotty, which I thought was quite funny.
That's real good.
It's very fun.
See,
Yeah, but
yeah, it was fucking broad daylight. Holy shit, it was bright. There was a whole section of the stadium I couldn't even see with the camera because it was so bright with the sunlight.
It was. So people were still like, obviously this time people were still packing in. It still wasn't super full and super loud. But yeah, but a lot of people, we were all chanting. When Miro came out, we all were very excited to see him.
Yeah, especially because you probably didn't expect to see him.
I didn't. I didn't expect there to be a contract signing. Because they set up the table like 20 minutes before, like they did the segment, and I was like, bit weird. They've set up a table. Are they going to do like a? At first, I was like, is that going to be like some like big announcement signing? Because I would have thought maybe that would have been cool to kick off the show. But
well, funnily enough,
contract.
They didn't have a signing, but they did have someone in the audience for this show.
They did.
I remember on the press conference, Tony Khan was saying, "Oh yes, no, she's not. Mercedes Moné is not cleared, so I just decided to have her at the show so she can watch it." I'm like, that's a very vague answer. You would fly her all the way to London just to sit there to watch it.
She could have gone and paid a ticket herself. You don't know. I did say, because you messaged me showing her tweet of her around London. I did say she's probably just attending, and it turned out to be that case.
Yeah. This definitely felt like the kind of thing of I guess it's like you see this in other lines of work where they're like, oh, here, welcome to our company. You just watch what we do, and maybe you want to be part of it. It wasn't quite as official as, remember back in the NXT takeovers when they would show someone in the crowd and they put their name up for like it's clearly that this person's coming in. Whereas I think with her it was more just probably because she was up in the stands and she wasn't close to the ring. If she was closer to the ring, then I think people would have assumed she was signed.
Yeah.
But based on the way that Tony Khan and Saraya spoke in the media scrum, it's very clear that they want her to come in and have a match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine that would be a marquee. That definitely would be a marquee match.
Especially given that, it was actually Mercedes Moné who accidentally retired her by kicking her in the spine. You can make a feud out of that.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But yeah, no.
Yeah, it was not nice to see. I don't know if I was wondering if they showed that on 0 Hour at all. It seemed like very much a thing for the crowd, but I imagine it actually was probably shown on 0 Hour.
I mean, pretty much everything you saw on the screen was what I saw.
Right, okay.
For the most part. But yeah, so we had that little contract signing, and then there was a segment with, I can't remember who. I was like getting food ready at the time, but I think it was like Jeff Jarrett and Grado were involved.
Yes. So Tony Schiavone was starting to talk to the crowd, and then Jeff Jarrett came out to be like, "Fuck the UK, America is great, you wankers," as he said. And he started pissing, and then the Big Show came out, which I was like, okay. I was very, very like, why is this like a grand return? Even though I found out later it was actually because he was on the pre-show. And they came out with Anthony Ogogo. But then Grado came out, not to his music. It was still Big Show's music, which was very strange. But he came out, and that was a lot of fun. He came out.
That segment, from what I saw, it felt very indie-rific.
It was very indie.
Which, to be honest, given it's a Grado segment, makes sense.
He got his revenge back and got to hit Jeff Jarrett in the head with his guitar.
Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't a match, because I think that would have been too far.
Yeah, just a weird impromptu match all of a sudden.
I think that
Maybe
especially would have gotten criticism from you haven't had a second women's match, but you could have Jeff Jarrett versus Grado. And then we get to the first actual match on the 0 hour, which was MJF and Adam Cole versus Aussie Open for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship, which I wish maybe in the editing I'll put a little quote in, but from the predictions video when you said they're not winning the fucking belts, there's no way.
Yeah, I've got Aussie Opens to win. They're not winning the fucking belts at all. No way they're winning the belts. I can't see them winning the belts at all.
Do you remember when you said that?
Yeah, I didn't think they would. I was fucking shocked.
Yep, and then they actually won it. They actually won the belts.
But then, as soon as that happened, it made me think that what my then thought was that they were gonna end up being friends by the end, and MJF will still be champion, and that exactly happened after that. If they didn't, I would have thought maybe they have Cole turn, which is very possible. But I think them winning here, pretty much like, all right, I think I know how the main event's going to go, and it actually went pretty much what I thought they should go.
Yep. They still teased a lot of swerves though, and they did really well at that.
They did.
But
yeah,
this
match was fun. It was a perfectly fun
little
8-minute
tag match. Obviously, they didn't want to go too long, just in case they were going to injure,
Well, they didn't want to go too hard either, just in case one of them got injured.
Yeah,
which would really put a spanner in the works.
No fucking German suplexes on the apron in this match. They didn't want to injure them in this match because they knew that they would probably get injured in the actual match at the end of the show.
Yeah, they'd probably get really busted up in the main event.
Which did happen.
Yeah, then up next we had... After that we had Hook versus Jack Perry for the FTW title.
Crimea River.
Where they used real glass on a limo.
His arm got absolutely
crimey with. Yeah, his arm did get fucked up.
Yes.
It was very fucked up, very much cut deep, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. This match was also just quite fun, hardcore kind of match to sort of get us ready for the main show.
Yeah, these matches they definitely serve their purpose, you could say.
Yeah, very, very fun, wacky stuff.
It's kind of ironic given what happened after, but I actually think that Jack Perry is starting to really find his groove as a heel character, because it's taken him some growing pains to get used to it.
I think the entrance really sold that for me.
Yeah,
with the music and the limo, it was very much okay. I think they're starting to figure out what kind of character this person is going to be.
Yep. Yeah, and just like the way he interacts with like the camera and the fans, it's working. Yeah, I think my favorite thing about the match was just like, because it's FTW rules, Hook just walked down the ramp and didn't even start in the ring. He's just like, I want to kick your ass right now. We shan't wait. And yeah, fucking Jack Perry's arm got lacerated by real glass, and it was fucking disgusting. And then yeah, it was basically just a big fucking brawl, really. It felt like the kind of thing you'd see, like an Attitude Era brawl match, if you know what I mean. Kind of felt like that.
He even teased doing the coast to coast rubbish bin spot.
Yeah. I mean, it's given that it's the FTW championship, it's not unlike something you'd see in ECW, really. You know, like a mid-card ECW match.
Yeah, and it very much had that sort of vibe.
The obviously you missed out on this, but Taz was on commentary for this match, and he was having a great time seeing Jack Perry get his ass handed to him by his son.
I imagine he would be very happy about that.
Yeah,
him getting beat up
and seeing the FTW title like restored. Like there was one. I think there was one bit where I can't remember exactly what the move was, but something Hook did something to Jack Perry, and then Taz just fucking laughed. He was like, "Ah, look at that! Look at that! This is great!" It's almost like he was watching entertainment.
It was to him in a sense, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was a definitely served its purpose, and they did well with it. But the big talking point from this match is what happened after, when Jack Perry got backstage.
Well, the thing that no one saw.
Yeah, when Jack Perry got backstage and he came face to fucking balls on this show to have Jack Perry, then CM Punk, then Kenny, and then the Elite all back to back matches. That was quite something. The backstage risk. And as it turns out, the Elite weren't even involved in this one. CM Punk just CM Punk and Jack Perry had a little altercation that we don't really know the facts about, but the fact that it's even being recorded.
No, there's two sides to it at the moment. It seemingly is like Jack Perry's instigated it, reportedly.
Well, yeah, he instigated it on camera.
Yeah, he did, which was I found quite silly.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand where Punk's coming from with the whole glass thing, doing a glass, like a proper real glass spot on Collision instead of like a event like this is I don't know, but that's just my take. But then the whole handling of it, probably by whoever instigated it, isn't. Yeah, it's not great, not a great look. Thankfully, I think post show it was more about the show itself, thankfully. But obviously, just now that the more details are coming out about it, 24 hours later, it's
quite a few.
Now they're both suspended.
There's quite a few people in the locker room that are just rolling their eyes at it because they're like, we just did our biggest show and that's what people are talking about.
Yeah. I think more people talk about it now than they were 24 hours ago, to be fair.
I think I think the biggest news to come out of that is that CM Punk will miss All Out in Chicago. That's quite major.
Yeah. It is what it is.
And again, it was another, if the rumors are to be believed, it's another thing of, this is something that Triple H said on the Stone Cold podcast in 2015. It was just like randomly out of nowhere, people will say, "Oh, Punk's quitting," and then he walks up to him and he's just like, "Oh no, it's fine." And it just felt like one of those things again, where CM Punk is threatening to quit in the heat of the moment because he has like a really short temper. But you know,
I think it's something that MJF said in the media scrum, you know, that resonate with me. Is like, yeah, they obviously you're gonna have people in your workplace that you are gonna want to headbutt sometimes, and it's just sort of that kind of thing.
But the thing is, MJF actually handled that really well. He didn't bear it. He did the opposite of bearing. He actually really praised the locker room.
Oh yeah, he did. He gave a great talk about it.
He instead of saying, "Oh fuck this, I work with children," like CM Punk did last year. You know, he was saying, you know, "Oh, we're all misfits and we don't get along, but we put on the best shows."
Yeah.
And that's how your champion should represent the company. Which is kind of funny because he's 27 years old and he's acting more maturely than CM Punk did a year ago. Who's like in his 40s. It's interesting how that happens sometimes. But anyway.
Yeah. As you could probably tell from when Punk came out, no one knew this at the time when he came out because it was still very much like it happened like a minute before. But if you look back on his entrance, you can tell Punk is slightly annoyed, like as if something happened when you look at this face. I did specifically remember when he came out, I was like, something feels different about this and I can't tell what it is, and now I know what it was. Thankfully, I think once the match started to get going, Punk did enjoy himself between Punk and Joe. Yeah, he kind of just moved on. To be honest, this match was great. Oh yeah.
It really was. I mean, it was definitely one of the shorter matches on the main card. It was 14 minutes, which isn't a short match per se.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 40 minutes exactly. It felt relatively very well paced, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that they are two of the oldest people on the roster, so it makes sense why they wouldn't go too long. Especially given, Samoa Joe's cardio isn't as, tightly screwed as some of the other guys on the roster. And also CM Punk has been described athletically as having an arse full of lead, which is true. If you watch his elbow drop, you can see it. He's like the skinniest but actually heaviest person. It's a strange dichotomy of he's not actually a big guy, but anytime he does a move, he looks really heavy, like he's super dense. But anyway, this was just a really fun brawl. I think my favorite moment from this match was when Samoa Joe caught his legs and tossed him into the bottom of the announcer's table and then just pulled a finger at him.
That was a great spot. That was a great spot.
I mean, Samoa Joe was, funnily enough, given that CM Punk's kind of supposed to be the big name, I think Samoa Joe really stole this match. He was such a great presence.
Oh yeah, because this match was very much crowd involvement. I think more so than any other match.
Yeah.
Because of the absolute, nature of how the crowd reacts to Punk. It very much was 80% Joe, 20% Punk, and I, of course, was part of that 20%. I absolutely chanted Punk's name every chance I got. Like the mark I am.
Yeah. But Samoa Joe he just has so much charisma in his matches. The way he just carries himself and the way he interacts with the crowd, especially as a heel. I think as a babyface, he's still fun. He's still fun ass kicker. But when he's a heel, he can really just go all the way with it and just have as much fun as he wants. Because Samoa Joe, he's completely self-aware of it. He knows he's a bit of a dick and he loves indulging in that. But this is like the perfect outlet for it. And the way he just like struts around and throws this man. But yeah, this was just a real a real old-fashioned brawl. And obviously it ended with a very, very rough Pepsi plunge from the top rope, which was called back to their Ring of Honor matches. And you notice that Punk landed on his feet because he didn't want to fuck up his knees because he took the knee pad down when he was trying to go for the knee in the corner. But yeah, again, it was just a nice callback to like the Ring of Honor matches, and also following up on the Collision match. This was a definitive finish as opposed to a roll-up, so this is kind of like the end of their feud, I guess. And they've ended it on the biggest stage possible. And obviously we knew that Punk was going to win because if it was for the real world championship, there was no point in having Joe win it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It felt like this was probably, like I said, this was probably one of the more predictable matches on the card, which is why this was my Genesis pick. I felt very much set in Punk winning this match.
Yeah, I think it was a good choice to open the show as well, because I don't think if it had come after any of the other matches, it may have had a tougher time.
Possibly.
Not in terms of star power, but in terms of the in-ring stuff. They are...
Maybe.
They did have a really good match, but I just think in terms of the momentum of the show, it was well placed.
Yeah, I think this was a good choice to open the show.
Yeah. And also there was a lot of other matches that needed to benefit from the darker lighting later in the night, given it was an outdoor venue. Open air.
Yeah, but this was very much wonderful opener. Great match, great reaction from the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, the crowd was hot, which was what you needed for this. And CM Punk got busted the fuck open.
He did.
Yeah.
He bled everywhere.
Yeah. They had Jim Ross for this match, I think, from what I remember. They usually have him. I think they had him for this and the Hook match. But yeah, they did well. And yeah, I guess for you this is a big deal seeing CM Punk live, given it's one of your favorites.
It was, yeah. It was the only thing I filmed all night, mainly because I didn't have much charge on my phone. Unfortunately, it goes pretty quickly, and I needed to save it to get home. But his entrance was the one thing I filmed, and yeah, I very much sung my heart out when he came out.
Like Mussolini.
Yeah, very, very great moment for me.
One thing I did think
watching this match.
One thing I did think though, and maybe this is a case of just different company syndrome, but I've always thought that it is a bit weird how people who beat Samoa Joe often don't challenge for the Ring of Honor television title. Because it's this weird separate thing that he just happens to have on another brand.
Yeah.
But I guess
because most of the people he's challenging, at least lately, are in bigger feuds. I guess Punk especially, because obviously he's beating it twice, but he recently was in a feud with Ricky Stark. Yeah, I get what you mean though.
I guess you could compare it to say, why didn't Jeff Hardy get a shot at the NXT title after he beat the NXT champion? But I guess that's a much worse comparison because that match was stupid. But yeah, I don't know. It is a strange thing that Samoa Joe has all these AEW feuds and the Ring of Honor television title just happens to be around his shoulders, which is happening on a whole nother brand. But I suppose that's just how it goes with that stuff. And I guess I tried to quantify it with the whole separate brand thing, but then you also have the AEW World Champion challenging for the Ring of Honor tag titles earlier in the show and winning it. But then also you could say things like, why hasn't Dax Harwood gotten a world title match given he pinned MJF? There's a few little things like that I'm like, there's a lack of continuity there. But it's not a major. But yeah, no, it was a good opener. And then after that, we had Bullet Club Gold versus the Golden Elite, which was in contrast to the sort of the very sort of how do I put this, like the man-to-man big brawl. This was just a really lightning fast 6-man tag team match, and it was, I don't know if spot fest is the right word, but it was definitely more sort of a quote-unquote fun match, if you get what I mean. A lot of fun interactions, especially with Ibushi. He was doing a lot of his comedic stuff in this match. But yeah, I thought this was a good party, is what I would say. Especially because any match with Juice Robinson is going to be a good time because he's always fun and he's always very loud. But there's quite a lot of dynamics here. Like, you had the fact that Jay White kicked Kenny Omega out of the Bullet Club before AEW started. And that was brought back around. And then, of course, you had Takeshita and Ibushi as well. And then, obviously, Hangman was there and Juice Robinson was there. I think I definitely noticed that Kenny Omega got a massive pop from the UK crowd.
He did. Very much did.
Yeah. Although I will say, probably one of my favorite things about this match was Bullet Club Gold's entrance. It was so fun. I loved their entrance, the whole way they did it. With, like, you had the guns out there, doing their little thing, and then you had Juice Robinson crawling on the ground like the boogeyman, and then Jay White behind him. It was fucking hilarious. It's just such great. They used the tunnel to its best extent. And
I think so, yeah.
I mean, Bullet Club Golden as a whole is just one of the most fun acts in AEW at the moment. They just, every time they appear, is just entertaining. And and then you had the the expected, BS moments from like Don Callis and the guns and all that. But yeah, I thought this is just so much fun. Just a real fun match. And then Takeshita rolled up Omega, which was a big shock. I didn't expect that.
No, I didn't expect a roll up like that, but I did predict it. So I knew they'd win. I fucking knew it.
Well, you predicted that Hangman would get pinned, which is not what happened.
No, that is not what happened. I didn't expect Kenny to be pinned, but I did expect Bullet Club Gold to win.
So that makes me think, is Kenny going to get the win in All Out?
I imagine he will.
And then they'll do a rubber match at like Grand Slam or something.
Possibly.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this was just a really fun match. And I definitely think Ibushi looked a lot better here than he did at Blood and Guts. He's gotten into better shape again. He's still not, peak New Japan Wrestle Kingdom against Nakamura Ibushi yet, or even Cruiserweight Classic kind of thing. But he looked better here than Blood and Guts, for sure. He's not as rusty as he was. I really like that bit where he got elbowed in the head or something, and then he just like turned his head like, no.
Yeah, I thought this match was fine. I think I was more in awe of who I was watching in the ring than the match itself, because I don't remember much from it other than probably Hangman's like crazy run of suicide dives.
Yeah, that is true. That did happen.
Yeah, I think this was fine, but I probably would have just had a singles match here.
It was definitely one of those matches where the commentary enhanced it a lot because of how they talked about all the dynamics between all the guys in the match.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of history between a lot of the people in the match itself. There's a lot of lore to it across Japan and America. And they did a really good job of, basically illustrating all of that under the match itself. But like I said, yeah, I would have definitely preferred Danielson versus Omega, for sure. That would have been awesome. But yes, and then after that, we had the dream match, the rubber match for the Tag Team Championship. We had FTR versus the Young Bucks, and as I predicted, despite the fact that Cash Wheeler was in an incident on the road in Florida with a gun, FTR did win, and are the best tag team of all time, as they should be. Which was not... I genuinely thought going into this, like, oh, have I picked the wrong team? But then I saw it, and actually they did win. Yeah, I thought it was a really good match, but I will say, not like the greatest match of all time. I definitely think there is something to be said about that. It's not like on the level of some of the other tag team matches I've seen, but it was really good. I think there is a tier above this match when it comes to tag team stuff that I think exists, is what I would say. But I still really liked it anyway. And they did tell a really good story. Like, there's that bit where Dax was turned behind and the Young Bucks set up for the Shadow Machine. That was quite a good moment.
For me, I think this was probably my second favorite match on the show. I really like this match a lot. I thought there was a really good amount of storytelling between the two teams, and I think the last 5 minutes really was quite exceptional.
Oh yeah,
I think the amount of really great near falls were excellent. I loved the part where Dax knows both of the Bucks is behind him.
Yeah,
and he's just sort of standing there, and then he's like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna go for it," and then he gets hit with a Shatter Machine.
Yeah,
that was great.
The reference they did to
the actual finish. The finish was also very fucking good.
Oh yeah,
very good way of getting to the Shatter Machine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I loved the reference they did to the Full Gear 2020 match where Cash did the 450 splash.
Yes, I forgot he did that because it came out of fucking nowhere. And I was like, fucking hell, I can't believe he did a flip.
Yeah, that's a reference there. In the first match they had, he did that and it caused FTR to lose. but this time they were able to escape that loss.
Yeah, but yeah, I was not expecting FGR to win this.
Yeah, that's quite good of the Young Bucks to put them over. You know, it shows their
and obviously, and I missed this ending bit because then this was the part where I needed to go for a piss break and get some popcorn. But I missed the part where they deny shaking their hands after the match.
Yeah, yeah, that did happen. And that kind of, in terms of a story, it kind of says, despite the fact it's the rubber match, there is a lack of closure to it. And I'm interested to see what they do with that. It potentially suggests are the Bucks going to turn heel, or what's going to happen there. Who knows? But it is certainly an interesting way to end that 3-match feud, is by not having the handshake. But yeah, it was a really.
I wonder if they're gonna do another match at some point.
It's possible. I'm not sure. Are they gonna do like a best of 7?
It definitely could do another match at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. They were calling it the rubber match, and like this is supposed to be the one that decides it. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're gonna do with this. But it was fantastic, and I hope that Cash doesn't have any legal ramifications after this, because that would be awkward.
It's gonna be probably guess we have to wait and see.
I think I heard there was a chant. It was like, Cash has got a gun, Cash has got a gun.
The section I was in was very chant heavy with gun references.
Then we get on to, holy fuck, the Stadium Stampede match. This was absolute chaos. Jesus. The amount of fucking hardware in this match. And man, where do we even start with the Stadium Stampede? What was it like for you being in the stadium, seeing it sort of happening?
It was very fun. Because at one point, because where we're sitting, we could see Eddie and Claudio fighting by the lights, which were like up from the stage. So that was quite fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a very fun extreme match.
Eddie and Claudio
very much a good time with this.
Eddie and Claudio settling their romance together. I loved that promo from Collision where Eddie's like, and Claudio, I'm saving the last for you, sweetheart.
Yeah. Very fun stuff. Very extreme. Everyone around me lost their mind with the skewers going into
Oh my
Moxley's
god,
head.
the skewers. It's just disgusting. It's so gross.
Yeah.
I showed Daniel that, and he's just like, what the fuck? What if that touched his brain? The brain. But I think I loved it how as soon as Eddie's music hit, he just ran to the ring. He didn't waste any time. He just
I actually missed their entrance because I didn't get back in time. Because where I was seeing, I was in section 114, and that entrance you can't enter through for some fucking reason. I don't know why. I don't know why Wembley set out for that section to not be entered through. So I had to go to around. They go past the whole crowd of people to get to then my section and then sit down. So I missed all the entrances of this match.
Oh, okay.
Shame.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I can tell you, like the Blackpool Combat Club, Santana and Ortiz, they all came out together, and they were all wearing like the big jackets and the sunglasses, looking like a bunch of dads. Especially Moxley, and then of course you had the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy entrance got a big pop. And you could definitely see on their faces there was a lot of emotion there because of how they've had to really work hard to get to this position. And I'll get more onto the Best Friends later because there was a great moment from this match involving them. And then obviously Eddie's music hit, and immediately he just sprints down the ramp to Claudio. He doesn't waste any time. He just pulls it down.
No.
And immediately
I've
beats
watched that back. It's very fun.
Yeah, it is so like hilariously self-aware how Eddie realizes that this feud is so. Maybe someone's made a comment to him was just like, man, the amount of times you talk about Claudio, it's like you want to fuck him or something. Like, he's so obsessed with him. And it's like it's almost like he's running to his lover, but instead of being lovers, they're haters. Like they just want to beat each other up. And it's this beef that started in Chikara like nearly 20 years ago, and it's just still going. He's holding this grudge, beating each other up over Wembley Stadium. It's absolutely hilarious.
They just need to have a singles match at some point, which would be fun.
Oh, I hope they do. And imagine if Claudio wins and Eddie just sits there just like, what the fuck? But you know, this match had so many fun moments.
Yeah.
I think my favorite was
when
when
fucked up the ladder spot.
Oh yeah,
because the ladder nearly fucking snapped.
Yeah, so sort of they had Penta get pile drived on a steel chair and he got taken out like a kayfabe injury, but then Penta Oscuro came out, his alternate, like back in Lucha Underground it was Pentagon Dark, and he came out as his dark persona, which was quite a nice moment. And then they broke the rungs of the ladder, which was really scary, and then they redid it. They redid the big power bomb. But my favorite spot, actually, there was quite a few moments that could be argued, but I think that the moment of the match that made me smile the most is when Sue came out in her van. Like, she got a new van and she brought the cookie tray. That was fucking great.
That was a great spot.
Especially because during that Rampage parking lot brawl, the Blackpool Combat Club like ruined her van. So she obviously got a new van hired in England and drove it into the arena, into the stadium, I should say. That was fucking great. What a cool mum, eh? And was that I think I showed you this, like she legitimately actually bakes cookies for the locker room, which is really cool.
It's very, very, very cute.
Yeah. And they did some really cool like callbacks and storytelling bits, like how Wheeler Yuta tried to pin Chuck Taylor with the seatbelt, which is the pin thing that Chuck Taylor taught him when he was in the Best Friends. And obviously Chuck kicked out of it because he knows how to get out of it. He knows how to counter it. That was a good little reference. And obviously, as you'd expect, Jon Moxley was bleeding within minutes because it's a day ending with Y.
Of course.
Not only was he bleeding, but he almost had like bits of his skin like hanging off his face. It was fucking disgusting. It's just so typical. Obviously with the skewers as well. And then I think probably for me the MVP for this match in terms of selling was Orange Cassidy, because he's been having so many matches and so many like injuries. I'm loving his development as a character, how he's doing less of the pockets gimmick because of how in pain he is from all these matches, and how he's having to really fight for his life. And obviously he fucking covered his hand in glass and did the orange punch, which was a great moment. And you obviously had the barbed wire tables, and I love, it's an absolutely hilarious shot. But after the match is over, you just got Eddie and Jon Moxley in the barbed wire table, lying on each other, covered in blood, and he's pulling the finger at him from behind him. And Moxley's just sitting there, just like looking so dejected. It's fucking great.
So when that image came up, Eddie flipping him off after the match,
yep,
the crowd everyone just started laughing. It was such a great,
it was so good
frame.
Yep. And Santana and Ortiz, given this is sort of like their first big match since Blood and Guts last year, they definitely got lots of time in the ring. They had a whole, I think it was with Orange Cassidy, they had like a big exchange. That was so much fun. I fucking love this match. This was just great fun. It was a mess, and it was a giant catastrophe, but it was so entertaining. It was an indie-rific, multi-man hardcore match that went all over Wembley Stadium, and it was just a great time.
Yeah, lovely, fun stuff. Very hardcore, very
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and to our surprise, Best Friends actually won the match.
Yeah, I actually didn't expect them to win.
Yeah.
But if they were going to win, it would have been Cassidy getting the pin.
Yeah, I think thinking about it now, it actually makes sense because I believe what I think will happen is that All Out, Cassidy's probably going to lose the title to Moxley.
Well, he's facing Penta on Dynamite, I think.
Yeah, he is.
So I imagine then, if that's the case, then they'll announce something on Dynamite that he's after he wins.
No, they've already announced
Possibly.
it on the press conference. Tony Khan said the winner of that match faces Moxley All Out.
Oh, okay. Alright, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's
probably... Yeah, I think that would be... I think that would be the best place to end the reign.
Yeah. And fucking that dude needs some time off.
Yeah, he deserves a bit of... He probably deserves the rest of the year off.
A bit of rest and relaxation. Holy shit. I know they're trying to like kayfabe up all the stuff, but I genuinely believe he's probably hurt in a lot of places because that dude has been wrestling so many matches over the last like year. And I kind of love how for the whole time of his reign, he's basically, and he said this in press conferences, he's basically the anti-MJF. So like MJF doesn't want to ever defend the belt unless it's absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. Whereas Orange Cassidy wants to do the opposite. He's like, well, I want the belt that anyone can challenge for.
Yeah, great stuff. Then we had, weirdly for me, even looking at all the reaction to this match, this was probably my least favourite thing on the card.
What, the women's match?
Yeah. And I think, looking back on it, I think there is quite a few really good stuff in this match between Saraya and Toni Storm.
Yes, there was, definitely.
But it is under 9 minutes long, and it felt like the finish, while I actually haven't looked back at the finish yet, but from what I'm hearing, it is actually a good finish, and it sounds like a good finish. I just think it felt like the match was starting to pick up some momentum, and then it ended.
Yeah, I mean, the finish was well done for. It was kind of like the classic fatal four-way finish where you've got two people in a maneuver and behind them the other person hits their finisher and pins them. That's basically what it was, and that made sense for the story they're trying to tell between Saraya and Toni Storm.
Yes.
One of my favorite moves from the match was when Saraya had Toni Storm in that submission she does, and then Brett hit the curb stomp, and it was fucking brutal.
Yes, that was brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just looked at the finish now. Yeah, that is a very good finish. I just wish if they give it another like 3 minutes, I think it really could have been picked up a notch.
I think probably my biggest annoyance with this match, though, if I had to pick one, is that the champion going into the match felt like she didn't really get featured, and it's probably because it was supposed to be Jamie Hayter.
Yeah, it just makes the point of her winning feel very much just like a diversion from the previous 2 weeks before then, with the whole women's wrestling stuff.
Yeah.
On the show. And now with Saraya winning, I very much had the sense of, right, okay, I don't know if I like this, and I don't think I do, and it's going to be interesting what they do the next 3 weeks or so. Like, once you get to the third week of this reign, it's like, okay, is this actually going to go anywhere? Is this actually going to be paying off properly?
Yeah, I'd be disappointed if this...
There was very much slight concern from the crowd, at least from the section I was in, where there's like, there were cheers, but it's like, I'm not sure how to feel about that.
I feel like this wouldn't have worked if it was anywhere else. If it was in America, I don't know if this would have worked.
No, possibly not.
Yeah, I did like, though, the, this is kind of a very meta thing, but you remember how that film The Rock made of her was called, like, Fighting With My Family?
Yes.
So in this match, they had her family all come out in an entrance with, "We Will Rock You" by Queen, which was quite a cool thing that they did. Tony Khan would have paid a lot of money for that, I imagine, but he probably did it because it's such a famous song that's used in British culture, especially at sporting events. However, I think what they kind of did with this was, instead of fighting with my family, it was like fighting for my family. Especially because they had Tony Storm accidentally hit Saraya's mother. And that kind of sparked the disagreements between them. I also want to say I like Tony Storm's new theme. It fits her new character really well. With an entrance.
People did start singing "God Save the King" during that, which was quite funny.
Yep. And
it wasn't allowed. It wasn't everybody, but it was a couple of people from where I was.
So you know how, like, when there's like a female wrestler that, say, like Corey Graves or Wade Barrett are a big fan of, they start listing off their accomplishments in like a really loud voice and like their comparisons and how they're like an inspiration. So Nigel McGuinness was basically doing that with Tony Storm, and he was just like naming off all these old inspirational women. And obviously Marilyn Monroe was one of them. And he's basically talking about all these really famous women from the 50s and all that around that time period. That was quite funny on the commentary, the way that Nigel McGuinness is such a big fan of her. It's also a massive contrast to her previous entrance. Like, when she was a babyface, she came out to that rock song, and now she's like the polar opposite. But I just kind of feel a bit bad for Shida, because she's not really... She doesn't feel like the star of this match, despite the fact that she was the champion.
She was very, very much the least star out of the three.
Britt Baker got a big pyro in her entrance. Yeah, I think that's probably
just got a bit longer.
That is probably the one big criticism people have of this show, is how the women's wrestling is handled. It's like the only really big thing that kind of...
that seems to be the case.
Because this was the only match that had the women in the match.
Yep.
I don't think it was a bad match. But...
No, I don't think it was a bad match.
I've seen better. Again, this is the thing, right? Is that if this was a Jamie Hayter match, 100% it would have been better. Number one, because she's one of the best in-ring in the company, and number two, because she's from the UK and she's so over, it would have just elevated everything. She definitely felt missed on this show, but I hope that at the next year's All In, she'll be able to be in it. I reckon she will. I reckon next year's All In, Hayter will get her big moment. As long as she can stay not injured. But yeah, I think it would be fair to say, if you thought this was the weakest match on the show, I think that's a fair assessment. But that, I also do think that this was a really strong show overall. But it is a shame.
I also don't think that's a popular thing to say. I think I'm probably the minority of that, I'd say.
Possibly. I'm not sure. I've seen a lot of hate for Saraya on Twitter.
I actually haven't seen any. I've seen like people like disagree with the decision, most likely.
I saw a lot of people posting the meme of Samoa Joe from Collision when he takes the headset off. Man, that episode of Collision was quite meme worthy, actually. There was quite a few moments on that are going to be referenced. Like, there's that, and then there's also the Eddie Kingston promo. And there's a few other things. I do remember on the media scrum, the last question was someone asked Tony Khan about the women's matches, and his answer was very weird. It's almost like he's completely ignoring the context of gender. He's just like, oh yes, I agree. It would have been great to get as many top stars on the show as possible, but I also wanted to pace the show in a certain way. It's almost like he's ignoring the specifics of the gender part of it, and he's only addressing, oh, I wanted to get the biggest names in the show. I think the idea that Tony Khan doesn't care about women's wrestling at all is a bit of a misconstruing of what he actually believes. I think the thing with Tony Khan is I just think he doesn't see I guess, in his mind, it's more about what other matches I want to see. And sometimes those matches are women's matches, but not always. And I think it's more just like, if I have 0 women's matches, then that will be really bad. So he tries to at least have 1 on every show. And if there are more matches that he wants to see, then he will add them. So like Full Gear 2022 had 3 women's matches on it, because they were 3 matches that he wanted to see, with stars that he wanted to feature. And I just think that he doesn't really... It's not that he doesn't care about women's wrestling, but he doesn't care about featuring it compared to men. I think it's more just like he just sort of goes, well, I only had 1 women's match because I wanted to feature the biggest and best stars, and the ones at my disposal happen to be men. Is probably what he really thinks. You know, I don't think he's sexist, but I think he's more just negligent rather than guilty, if you get what I mean. And it's more just of an oversight of there is an actual demand to see more specifically women's wrestling, not just big stars, but like actual female stars on these shows. That's the real demand, and I don't think Tony Khan is on that same wavelength. I think he just thinks of it as, I want to see stars on my show regardless of gender, which is probably his view, but he won't say that publicly because it'll become political and he'll get in trouble. But I think you could have fit a TBS title match on this show and moved something off it. You could have easily had Hook versus Jack Perry on All Out, and had Ruby and Chris Statlander on this show.
Yeah, I probably would say they probably should have.
But again, you know, this is probably Tony Khan trying to justify the whole 4 pillars thing, because he wants to have all of them on all the big shows. He even squeezed Sammy Guevara on this show, even though he wasn't in a match. Yeah, that's probably what it is. Cares more about the pillars than women's wrestling, I suppose. But then again, you know, it's not just an AEW problem. They, like we said, they didn't have Trish versus Becky on SummerSlam. Instead, they're doing it at Payback. And now the feud has gone on for way too long. It was that thing on GMO where it's like rivalry on cooldown.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very much that.
Yeah. No, I didn't out and out dislike the women's match. I thought it was decent.
No.
I thought they told a good story. I just think it gets overshadowed by the fact that everything else in the show was so just insanely fun. But like, if you look at the Fatal 4-Way match from last year's All Out, that was way better than this. And that was partly because Jamie Hayter was so over. After that, we had the coffin match, and that was when it started to actually get dark, which was a good. That was probably ideal given that it was a Sting and Darby Allin entrance.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they had a really cool pre-entrance thing with Darby and Sting, with the whole Jack the Ripper, Joker, and Crow combined thing with Sting, and the "It's Showtime." That was awesome.
It's very cool.
And what was this? I can't remember the name of the song, but it was the Metallica song that Tony Khan paid for Sting's entrance.
Seek and Destroy.
That's the one. That was awesome. And not to mention the entrances from the other men. You had Swerve Strickland and Flash Garments doing the live performance of his theme, and then you had Swerve doing.
Yeah, they did.
and Swerve doing the Who's House to the whole stadium.
That was cool. That was cool.
And one of my favorite little details, usually Christian Cage has like a countdown for his theme, but this one they had Big Ben doing the countdown. That was hilarious.
That was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Christian Cage's match was fucking hilarious.
Yeah. I love Christian Cage. He's still coming out with the TNT title. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the commentate, like, Excalibur is absolutely burying him for it as well. He's just, like, allegedly thinks he's the TNT champion. But right behind him, you see that man right behind him? That's the real champion.
Good stuff.
Yeah. I would have...
This match was very fun.
I would love if at some point Tony Khan pays for the actual Evanescence song that it's based on. I say based on, bloody Dale Oliver and TNA stole it and basically just changed it into an instrumental. But I would like if at some point Tony Khan gets the actual song for his entrance, maybe in his last match. But yeah, this was so fun. This is probably one of my favorite Sting AEW matches ever. This was
I thought
so
it was
fun.
really fun.
Really fun match. And it probably helps that you got so many people involved in this match who just have so much fun star power. One of my favorite moments was there was that bit with Prince Nana. I loved that bit. That was fucking hilarious. Prince Nana is so funny. But yeah, Swerve is just one of the best heels in wrestling. I think he has so much charisma, and he's so good at playing that sort of over-the-top, almost comic book villain with all his like facial expressions. And I loved the bits where like his hand got stuck under the coffin lid. That was fucking great. And then Sting just like sat on it. Not just that, but also when the table didn't break and then Sting just jumped on it again with his full ass weight. His fucking 64-year-old ass weight just breaking the table and squashing him. This is hilarious. And then, of course, you got, like, you know, Darby Allin doing the really dangerous bumps on the coffin. And, again, Christian Cage, another one of the best heels in the business. Just a legend. The whole match was just such a blast. What was it like seeing it in person?
Yeah, seeing this in person was just, like, super surreal watching, this match just was so fun. Like, the crowd really got into it. Everyone fucking cheering, wooing. Yeah, it's just a lot of the high spots were really fun. There was obviously the spot where Sting tried to splash through the table. It didn't work. Then I chanted, "I am the table," and I got a couple of laughs. Yeah, and then he did it again, and then he got through that time, which is quite fun. Yeah, I really enjoy this match a lot. I thought this was just super fun, coffin hardcore match.
Mm-hmm. I fucking love how cartoonish Swerve Strickland is. He loves doing like the visual comedy and stuff. But despite that, as an athlete, you can still take him seriously. You know, he's never too silly.
Yeah, I probably agree with that.
Yeah, and then there was also the spot with Nick Wayne as well. That was funny. When Nick Wayne got like carried to the back. But yeah, I mean, you got like four of the best storytellers in the business in this match. You got two of the best like current stars with Swerve and Darby Allin, and then you got two of like the legends Sting and Christian Cage. And the whole thing was great.
Yeah.
I love the detail of inside the coffin. It had Swerve's house written in it, which is so funny.
One of my other favorite parts of the match was when you had Christian Cage and Sting in the ring alone together, and everyone started chanting TNA.
Yes.
It was bloody very fun.
Yeah. And they also Sting had a cricket bat instead of a baseball bat.
Yeah, that was quite fun. Very lovely.
Mm. But yeah, this was just so fun. I think there's been a lot of Sting matches that have had some dodgy moments, like at Forbidden Door. But this one was great. I loved this. And it went like 16 minutes as well. It was proper length.
It was. It gave it a lot of time.
Yeah. Man, Darby Allin makes some pretty loud car crashes, though, doesn't he?
He does.
He just fucking flies around.
God, the fucking Sting Scorpion Death Drop on the casket when it was so dented was fucking brutal.
Yeah. And what was it? He did a coffin drop to the casket and it was on its side and he like whacked his back on it. Oh yeah, there was also one other small detail that made me laugh is like when they closed the coffin lid at the end of the match, Swerve Strickland's dreads were still stuck in the lid. So you could see his dreadlocks hanging out the end of the casket. That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a great spectacle. Great match. Loved it. And I think it's just it's kind of a shame for AR Fox that he couldn't be in this, but I also think Christian Cage in it added something to it.
It did, I think so, yeah.
So ultimately it was kind of for the best anyway. Even if the angle they did before it was stupid, and they could have handled it better. And then we move on to Will Ospreay versus Chris Jericho, which again, you made an incorrect prediction about. Jericho lost another big match.
It was more of a fear that they were going to give Jericho this win when they really shouldn't, and I am glad I was wrong. I was very glad I was wrong.
So did you
Will was insanely over in this match.
Oh yeah. So, did you go for the piss break during the Fozzy performance, like you said you would?
Oh, I went for it before the Stadium Stampede match.
I see.
So I didn't need to go. But thankfully, it wasn't an actual full-on performance, thank God.
Yeah. It was just an entrance.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah.
See, that's the thing, is that it's not like a WWE, performance entrance. It was just enough for the entrance itself. And if it was a full-on performance, I think Jericho would have been absolutely exhausted, so that was probably a good idea. There was one moment in this match that was quite scary, though. That was when Jericho went for the Os Cutter, and he, whacked his head on the floor. On the canvas. Did you remember this moment? It looked bad on TV. I don't know how bad it was actually in physical, but the camera angle made it look like Jericho just landed right on his head when he tried to do it.
I don't remember that.
Okay. You might have to go back and see it, but the angle in which he landed, because he kind of missed him, he landed on a 45-degree angle with his head straight to the ground.
Right.
But it seemed like he wasn't concussed, so that's a good thing.
Oh, do you mean when Will went off the top rope?
No, I'm talking about when Jericho tried to do an Os Cutter to Will.
Oh, I remember that, but no, I don't remember it looking bad.
So from the camera angle that I saw, it looked like he went headfirst into the ground.
Right, okay.
It's pretty bad, but it looks like he wasn't concussed. It looked like he wasn't concussed, so that's alright.
Because what I'm thinking of is when Will, near the start of the match, flipped off the top rope. Yeah, the top of the turnbuckle onto Jericho, and it seemingly looked like he put all of his leg on Jericho's face, and he ate shit.
Yeah.
Great spot, though.
Yeah. Oh, and there was also another great... Fucking Chris Jericho did an amazing Hurricane Rana spot in this match. He didn't even hit the ground.
Oh, that was the spot of the match.
It was like something out of a Rey Mysterio match from 1997. It was so good.
Yes, it was.
But I was actually surprised at how... Chris Jericho must have been doing some DDP yoga, because I was surprised at how well he was able to keep up with Will Ospreay in this match.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed this match quite a bit more than that it probably had any right to be with Jericho.
Mm-hmm. He definitely tried hard. He knew it was a big show and he put everything he had into it. And I loved the, I'm not sure if you saw this, but when Will Ospreay kicked out of the Judas effect, which is very rare, Sammy Guevara's face, he did like the Paul Heyman like shocked face.
He did, yeah. I actually missed the part where Guevara hit Ospreay with the, I'm assuming it was a baseball bat.
Yeah, it was whatever his
something.
whatever Jericho's baseball is called.
I completely missed that.
Yeah. But this was just a great match, and I'm glad that Ospreay won because he's such a massive star.
He was very over in this match.
Yeah. And of course, Jericho with another loss is kind of going down the spiral at the moment.
Yeah, the post-match stuff I didn't really care about. All I said was like I sort of just chanted out like Sammy to just turn on him.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we get Jericho versus Sammy, maybe at All Out, or maybe something after that.
It feels like we've been building for this for like over a year.
Which is just
long overdue.
Another match that Jericho can lose. Is 2023 just going to be the year that Jericho loses everything?
Possibly. That might be just what they're going for. I think that is what they're obviously going for, but I just don't know what it's going to lead to.
As long as they don't pull a John Cena 2012 thing, where he's like, The Rock didn't beat me, I beat me. Don Callis also got, there was a funny, I forgot this, there was a really funny moment when I think he came out on commentary for the Golden Elite match. I think he was on commentary for that one. And one of the commentators said, and someone who's not so great to be joining us. And then I think Tony Khan said it again on the press conference as well. Someone who's not so great to say hello to. That was hilarious. I feel like Don Callis as a commentator, he's like what JBL tries to be, but he's actually good. He gets the right kind of heel heat, whereas JBL gets just fucking annoying.
Anytime Callis was on the screen, he got massive boos.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Great.
Fucking Don Fellas. So good. Yeah, great match. And then we get to the House Rules No Holds Barred 6-man tag team match. That was the stipulation that the Acclaim chose. The Trios title. I think this, for the most part, was a very sort of like a feel-good match, you know? Just to pay off the feud. They've done a really good job on Collision of building up the whole Billy Gunn thing.
The best spot on this match was when they all teamed up on Julia Hart.
Oh yeah, and they did the big scissor. That was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of the match.
Much like Jack Perry, like we said earlier, but even more so, I'd say. I think recently, especially during the Collision era, I think Julia Hart's really finding her character recently. She's been doing a really good job at sort of discovering what her character is within the House of Black. And I think one of my favorite things about this match was in the House of Black's entrance. They did the Bray Wyatt lantern at the start. That was really nice. Nice tribute, and all the lights went down, and everyone put their flashlights on.
That was cool. That was really cool to see.
I
will say, Max Caster's rap was probably one of his best in a long while.
The Prince Andrew line was great.
Everyone, honestly, when I tell you that everyone around me lost their shit to that, I cannot I am completely underselling it. It was fucking insane.
Yeah. It was great.
Everyone lost their shit. The fucking look, Bones, it's Harry, Hermione, and Ron Weasley.
They love to bully Buddy Matthews, don't they? They just
they do.
Always Buddy Matthews who gets the stick of it.
Yeah, and then I did the Acclaimed. This was also the entrance I cheered a lot because I love the Acclaim. I think the Acclaimed are great.
Yeah, and again, talking about sort of like legends near the twilight of their career, we had like 3 matches in a row of this. You know, you had Sting and Christian Cage, you had Chris Jericho, and in this one you had Billy Gunn with a big win.
Yeah, very heartwarming moment. It's also just quite cool to see how far the Acclaimed have come.
Yeah, because they started out
debuted during the pandemic. Yeah, started out on Dark, debuted during the pandemic. Only really started picking up steam like a year and a half ago, and that was even before then. I was like, these guys are pretty cool. These guys should be pushed. I
remember it was around the time that Bryan Danielson first came into AEW, and he had that match with Anthony Bowens. That's when I really started to notice them.
Yeah, and it's quite cool to see where they've come since then. To be, you know, they were the pre-main event. They were the second last match on the show, and they got to win the trios titles with Billy Gunn. That is pretty cool.
Their storyline with Billy Gunn's been going on for ages as well.
It's been a year, pretty much.
Yeah. When they started feuding with the Guns.
Yeah, just a very lovely moment. I really like that. It's a shame. It's very fun. I forgot that House of Black were the trios champions, to be quite honest. Because if I knew that when I did predictions, I probably might have said them. Maybe I would have gone when they claimed anyway. But yeah, I feel like this is, hopefully they have a decent run with it probably for the rest of the year, and then probably drop it at Winter's Coming or something. You know, they can have a good couple month reign to sort of maybe this being Billy's last hurrah.
For sure.
It'd be really fun to see.
And then he can have like a proper retirement. I think when Billy Gunn takes his boots off next, it'll be a much more feel-good ending. They'll probably do that spot again where he takes the boots off, but instead of him being sad, it'll be him like accepting it more. But yeah, and then they did they brought back Daddy Ass after the match that they won. Because you notice in the entrance they didn't do the sesame because he was badass Billy Gunn, and he was wearing his Attitude Era trunks as well, which was a lovely detail with like the lips on it. It's just a shame they couldn't have, obviously for copyright, but imagine if they had like the whole "I'm an ass man."
Yeah.
Mr. Ass. So yeah, that was great, and House of Black, as always, were great. Brody King massively over with his big "ho, ho, ho."
Yeah, everyone charged along with that, which is quite cool.
But yeah. I'm really interested to see on Collision if I would imagine, if I were to hazard a guess, that whatever's going on with Roosh at the moment might have something to do with the Trios division, because there's been all these vignettes in Mexico with Preston Vance and Dralistico and Jose, and it's been referencing Roosh because he's just re-signed. And of course we haven't seen Andrade on TV since he got back his mask, so I'm interested to see what happens with that, because it's been a really interesting set of video packages for them, and like a sort of continuing story. That's actually one of the things I love the most about Collision, is how many video packages they do and like the production value of them. They're really sort of like, they look like these little independent short films. But yeah, this is a nice feel-good match. And then we get to the main event between MJF and Adam Cole, which was just, I think everyone in that building was having a great time with this match. It was so electric.
This was for me I guess in terms of in-ring work, probably FTR Young Bucks was the match of the night. But for me, this whole match was brilliant from start to finish. I absolutely loved everything about it. When they did the double clothesline to end the draw, I knew exactly what they were doing. I knew exactly what they were doing. And I thought, this is fucking brilliant. And as soon as Cole grabbed the mic, I'm like, he's going to ask for 5 more minutes. And then he did. And Max said, no, we go until there's a winner in fucking Wembley. And I fucking went mad. I went fucking mad for that. I absolutely loved it.
Yep. The whole atmosphere.
Roderick being a little pissy, jealous ex is fucking amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I'm so glad. This is again what MJF said in the press conference about AEW being a company for misfits that somehow beats all the odds. I love the fact that in the main event of the highest paid attendance show of all time, Roderick Strong had something to do with it. It's one of the least expected things you could imagine. But everything about this main event is so opposite to something that Vince McMahon would do. When you really boil it down and think about it, this kind of exemplifies exactly what makes AEW what it is and what makes it unique. Is you have people like MJF and Adam Cole and Roderick Strong involved in this story, and they are all just so utterly opposite to the traditional, this is what the big pro wrestling main event is. And despite that, they were the most over characters on the show. This was the most compelling story on the show and has been one of the most compelling stories in wrestling of this year, you know, along with stuff like the Bloodline, for example. This was so good, and it was 29 minutes long, maybe half an hour if you include the break in between the bells. It was perfectly told story. I loved everything about this. This is one of my matches of the year, honestly. I fucking loved this match so much. This is up there with...
The only thing I would have changed is this was post-match. I would have had Cole, and I thought this is what he was going to do, I would have had Cole hit Roderick with the belt instead of dropping it. I would have thought that would have been really cool.
I did think that might happen.
Got a monster. That's what I thought was going to happen from how it was all set up, because Roderick was on the ropes. I think that would have been a monster pop if he did that.
Yeah. It's possible that going forward they might not want to do that, though. With this character, they might not want to have him turn on Roderick, specifically. Because they might not want Roderick to be as justified, because if he gets hit in the head, then he'll have more of a reason.
True.
But I was anticipating... I was like... Yeah, I would have loved it if he did it, though.
Yeah. It's just, I think the apt way of describing it is that they did coexist, and it's such a unique thing in wrestling where you have a story where the two guys are notorious flawed people who constantly turn on their so-called friends or people that they associate with. To have a 2-month-long story of them actually becoming friends from enemies, and to actually care about each other, and to actually support one another, and actually go through fights but still make up in the end in such a high emotional situation. Honestly, it's so good. The dynamic in this match was brilliant. with Max being the one who's more hesitant because of how much he's learned from Adam and his friendship with Adam. And then in turn, Adam not hesitating throughout the match up until probably the last couple minutes, where he really, really questioned if that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's great. It was really great stuff. The story they told, quite simply, is, I think we talked about this, I can't remember, on video or privately. Wrestling right now is sort of reimagining and sort of rediscovering its ability to tell a narrative in these ways. It's similar to how the Bloodline have done it, and now with this story here, it feels like we're now in a era that narrative is sort of hyper focused on, more so than it's probably been ever before for a long while. It's such a great time to get to watch this. It's I will never forget this match. Getting to watch this live.
Yeah, it definitely
incredible.
This kind of thing is what it's fitting that it's AEW that's doing it, but it was something that you saw Kenny Omega do a lot in Japan with Kota Ibushi and the Young Bucks and all that with them in the Bullet Club. And then once AEW started, pretty much any match within the sort of umbrella of the Elite, especially when you look back to Revolution 2020, you have that tag match with Kenny and Hangman versus the Bucks. That kind of really opened people's eyes to, you can tell stories between people who have these relationships. And lo and behold, shortly after that, you get the Bloodline in WWE, which that's, Roman Reigns and the Usos and Paul Heyman. That really started to introduce that into the WWE side of things. And then once again, following that, you sort of with AEW, like the whole Hangman thing of him 2 years to get the belt and winning it off Kenny and having the Bucks come out there about to interfere and then they don't do it. It's a really, really interesting evolution, if you will, of doing pro wrestling. And here, they did it with MJF and Adam Cole. I find it hilarious because I think it was about 1.5 years ago, someone said to Cody Rhodes, what about MJF versus Adam Cole? And he's just like, who would want to see that match at that time? And 1.5 years later, it's the main event of the biggest wrestling show of all time. And it was insanely over. And like you said, I love it how it's kind of almost... It's two guys who have been heel before, who have both gone down the path of being a backstabbing bastard, and they're both in their own separate, unique, different ways are realizing the faults, and they're having to resist the urge. Of course, with it's Adam Cole who's just turned face, but he's having to resist the urge to fall back into his old ways, and he's being torn between the Undisputed Era with Roderick Strong, right? He's being torn because Roderick Strong's connection to him, that references their connection in NXT. And it's the NXT Adam Cole heel character. And he's being, he's in his head is constantly fighting this battle between that Adam Cole and the one that he's currently at. Of course, with MJF, it's the lifelong story of rejection sensitivity disorder, along with his ADD, all of his history, and the fact that he's so insecure and doesn't believe that anyone could actually be his friend without wanting something from him. Which is why you get that awesome moment at the end where it's just like, you never wanted to be my friend, you just wanted the belt. That sort of thing, and of course they hug it out at the end. It's so satisfying, and it's hilarious because if you went back a couple of years ago and said, MJF is going to be the biggest babyface in wrestling, people would be like, no, you're full of shit. But it's actually happened. It's insane that it's actually happened. MJF has turned into the biggest babyface in wrestling. How is that possible? But that's the thing, is that's the power of when you really focus on narrative and character and storytelling. And these two guys are such great, not just wrestlers, but actors. They're both so good at acting. And I find it funny how when Adam Cole first came into AEW, everyone's just like, oh, it's a big mistake, you know, he's going to be buried, he's too skinny, he's gone pale, he's feuding with Orange Cassidy, he's doing comedy feuds, this is all silly, and Adam Cole's just a joke now, he's being buried. And then what do you know, comes back from injury, we get to this feud and this show. This is the best thing he's probably done in his whole career. Arguably. It's certainly one of them. I would find it hard to argue something that's better than this feud that he's done in his career, especially given how it's ended at this big stadium stage with this level of stakes for the world title, with this whole story, and how it was all set up in the pre-show with that tag match as well. The fact that I loved how they used the Ring of Honor tag belts as a part of the story as well at the end. How he's just like, don't worry, we've still got these, we're still the tag title, you know? And I love how they reference, because remember how when MJF lost the match on Collision to the FTR, he was having that meltdown in the corner. And they did the reverse of the roles where MJF said, no, it's okay, we still have these. And then when MJF thought he was being betrayed by Adam Cole, who was about to cry, he turned his back just the way that Adam Cole turned his back on Collision. And they did the roles reverse of that whole scenario. And then they hugged at the end, and Roderick Strong stood in the aisle full of tears and hugged by the kingdom with all the confetti everywhere. It was awesome. Loved this whole thing. It was pretty much everything it needed to be. And they told a great story. And Jesus Christ, some of the violence in this match as well. We're talking about from like a wrestling standpoint. That brainbuster on the steps was insane. Looked like fucking MJF took a chunk out of his shoulder and nearly broke his neck on that. I just love the story they told between the fact that they're friends, but they're also having to fight each other. And like you said, with the double clothesline and the draw.
Yeah. That was good shit.
And actually, again, talking about the way that MJF is able to make the most out of something really simple, like the whole spot where he did the suicide dive and it got that huge pop, was awesome.
Because they set it up early in the night of him hesitating and it not working out.
Yeah. And then also the fact that out of desperation, MJF had to win with a small package. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm. It leads to the fact that they can do another match probably much later down the line.
And also in terms of long-term storytelling, do you know why I love that detail so much of the finish? It's because that's exactly how CM Punk beat Wardlow about 1.5 years ago, when Wardlow was about to win, and MJF was there for that match. He was at ringside and he saw it. CM Punk beat Wardlow with the small package, which is exactly, and this is also something that I just watched literally the morning, well, not the morning, but like just before, the night before All In, or what it was before I watched Collision. I watched the match between Bret Hart and Diesel from Survivor Series 95, and it's the exact same thing. Bret was about to be beaten by Diesel, but he rolled him up with a small package and got the title. So it's like this continuous passing the torch down between all these wrestlers. It's like CM Punk was inspired by Bret, and now MJF was inspired by Punk. So good. Great match.
Yes.
And just a great show overall, really.
Yeah, it was a really, really great show to witness.
I reckon if somehow they were able to improve how the women's side of it was handled, like having more women's matches and having more feature for them, and maybe if they had the Kenny Danielson singles match and if they had Jamie Hayter on the show, this could have been like, you know, one of the best ever pay-per-views in terms of where I rank it. I think just those small little wrinkles on it were what made it just a slight cut below everything else. That's at the very tippy top. But as a whole, this was a great pay-per-view. I loved almost all of it. I was actually genuinely surprised at some of the matches as well, like how great they were, how consistently great. Like the coffin match, I was really surprised by that, how great that was. The Jericho Ospreay match, I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't expect Jericho to go all the way to that level. And like the Stadium Stampede was awesome. The tag match was awesome. The Punk Joe match was real good, and obviously the main event was the highlight. And some really feel-good moments. So yeah, just overall a fantastic show.
Was. Yeah, I'm absolutely going again next year, no doubt.
If I had the money to fly there, I would. But that's a fucking expensive flight to go all the way there.
Yeah, it's like what, like $1,000 or something?
Yeah. Oh, it's more than that. It's $1,000 to go to Australia in Perth. It'd be even more expensive. It'd be even more expensive to go to England. Maybe like $2,000.
Fucking hell.
Well, it's hard to say because the thing is, for you, your currency is pounds, so maybe it is $1,000 for you. Because like 2,000 New Zealand dollars is about 1,000 pounds. So to me, $1,000 is not as valuable as your $1,000. That makes sense.
Right.
There is one thing though that I am slightly worried about, and I'm interested to see how they handle it. They have a pay-per-view in 1 week.
They do.
In Chicago. Number one, if it's true that CM Punk and Jack Perry have been suspended, then you're not going to have the biggest Chicago star on the Chicago pay-per-view, which is a massive concern in terms of the what the crowd is going to do with that. And the second thing is how are they going to follow this? Like, is All Out, which is supposed to be originally was going to, like, it was usually their biggest pay-per-view of the year. Is it now going to feel like a B show now that it's come 1 week after this one? Because all they have...
Possibly.
They have one Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision to build to this pay-per-view, despite... I mean, they have announced a few matches already, but in terms of filling out the rest of the card, they've only got one Dynamite, one Rampage, and one Collision to build the show. And they're going to have to really cram a lot in to fill it out. And in terms of story, I'm just curious to see what they do with All Out. Because they don't have much time to really build out what the main event match is going to be. Because, we've got Omega Takeshita, and we've got Darby Allin versus Luchasaurus, and we've got Miro Powerhouse Hobbs and Ruby versus Chris Statlander. But apart from that, I feel like it's going to be interesting to see how they handle what comes next. Not that I'm not... I am looking forward to seeing the pay-per-view, but I do have a bit of trepidation because it does beg the question of, is there such a thing as too much too soon? Like, would it have been a bit more realistic to maybe space them out? But maybe there's a reason Tony Khan did that. And it was kind of one of the things I was questioning a bit, like, going into this show, was you would have all these people saying, I challenge you for a match at All Out in Chicago, and it's like, well, why wouldn't you want to be on the big stage? It's just a weird sort of logical loophole that they're jumping through sometimes. And is this going to kind of feel like... Remember when they did Payback like 1 week after SummerSlam in 2020? I guess when it was the pandemic, it was a bit different because there was no fans.
It was a little bit different, yeah.
Yeah. But this does kind of feel like that. It just feels like All Out is just a Payback pay-per-view for AEW. Which it shouldn't, because it's supposed to be a really big show. And I'm sure it will be a big show, but it doesn't feel as big as it has in previous years. And if it doesn't have CM Punk on the show, then that's a real concern. But yeah, later in the week when we do the predictions, I'm sure we'll address all of that more. But in terms of this show, I was a big fan of it, and I'm looking forward to what they do next year. And my one big request for All Out next year, All In next year, is have more women's wrestling on it. That's the thing that I want Tony Khan to do. And hopefully, because I believe next year is when they do the TV rights negotiations, I hope that Warner Brothers Discovery are more like they are open to the idea of more women's wrestling on the show, because I think it's the one big thing that AEW needs to address to really make that. I feel like it would be, in my personal opinion, I think a better minimum, instead of one women's match per show or one women's segment per show, they should have one women's per hour. So if they have one on Rampage, two on Dynamite, two on Collision, because of the hour, I think that would be better. You have one women's segment per hour. And that, I think that would actually satisfy a lot of people. And now that you've potentially got someone like Mercedes Moné coming in, eventually you have Jamie Hayter coming back. Hopefully at some point Jade Cargill will come back. I feel like there is room for that. For the big women's stars, especially with Athena at some point you imagine will lose her Ring of Honor title. If she brings that character to AEW, that heel character, again, that's another set of feuds that could happen if you bring her up to AEW. There is room, I believe, to have one women's match per hour on TV, and to have at least two women's matches on pay-per-view, which is what they should have anyway. The TBS title should always be on pay-per-view, in my opinion. Yeah. But, yeah, I'll let you sort of conclude. What are your sort of overall thoughts on this show?
Yeah, it was an experience, and it's a show that I'm very glad I went to, that I got to experience just so much in like 5 hours. Quite crazy. Yeah, I think it was an absolute hit, and it's no surprise that they already announced literally minutes after the show that they're going to come back next year. So yeah, I'm absolutely excited for them to. Well, it's seemingly how they discussed it. This is going to be an annually thing, which I'm very much for.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
it's.
I also love
experience.
What MJF suggested on the press conference about going to other stadiums around the world, like the Aztec Stadium in Mexico would be a great idea. Because Mexico would absolutely fill out and be loud for that. I'd love that. I personally, just speaking personally from my own perspective of the world, I would love it if they brought an AEW show to the Melbourne Cricket Ground, because that's close to me and I could just fly there. Only take a few hours to fly there. That stadium's fucking massive, the Melbourne Cricket Ground.
Mm.
And WWE filled out a stadium for Super Showdown in, can't remember which part of Australia that was in, but it was somewhere on the east side. And I believe they're going to Perth for Elimination Chamber, which will be awesome. But yeah, I would be very interested to see AEW do more stadium shows.
Yeah.
Because this was a massive success. Just have more women's wrestling, please. That's like the one thing. If they have more women's wrestling, there's not that much to complain about with AEW in terms of their on-screen products. Apart from that, I think. Obviously, the backstage stuff is noteworthy and has a lot of negatives to it that they need to address, and that they do address. I think I noticed Tony Khan has become a lot more professional in the last year when it comes to the issues. He's really, I guess you could say, grown calluses as a promoter. Like, he was very startled by Brawl Out. You could see he wasn't ready for it. He'd never experienced that kind of shit with his business before. But now that he's grown used to the idea of people not getting along, he's starting to become a bit more like an officer than a deer in the headlights. And I noticed at the start of the press conference, he said yes, there has been an altercation backstage, and we are going to be investigating, and no, I cannot comment or answer questions about it. And he handled it much better than he would have a year ago, which I think it shows a marked improvement.
It's something.
And you can definitely see from all the stories about, well, apart from when CM Punk kicks people out of buildings, but apart from that, there seems to be a lot more structure in the backstage stuff, despite, because, you know, Lufisto said about stuff about how there's no structure, but that was a long time ago. That was nearly a year and a half ago now. Ever since that has happened, it seems like there's been a lot more structure added to the backstage, which is what they need. Because as MJF said, this is a roster of misfits and people that don't get along, so you need to create some semblance of balance so that they can, yeah. Anyway, you're looking fucking exhausted, so I think we should probably wrap this up.
I am very, very exhausted.
You look like you're about to fall.
Yeah, it's been a very long weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see you all next time for the predictions for Payback and All Out, which will be another big weekend of wrestling. And then after that's over, after that weekend is over, until we get to, like, Wrestle Dream and Fastlane, I think we'll have a break from wrestling videos for a bit, and we'll focus a bit more on the main channel, especially with Doctor Who, and with, I might finish off that last Pink Floyd album we did a while ago. And then I will be gearing up for the Advent calendar around that time, in terms of planning that and keep putting that together. So yeah, you still got a few things left with a couple of pay-per-views next weekend, but then I think I'll take a small break from the wrestling content until I have sorted out where things are going to be structured in December, and then I can sort out what kind of wrestling content we'll get, because we'll definitely get back to the sort of more normal videos eventually, but I think it's we've had a good run of weekly content to really start the channel off hot. And after All Out, I think we'll have a small break, and then we'll come back to it, you know, within the following months. But yeah, this show was one of the main reasons I made this channel, because I knew it was coming up, and it just felt like the right time, because wrestling feels like it's white hot right now. After the whole Bloodline Sami Zayn thing, and with this MJF Adam Cole storyline, it feels like people are really paying attention to this stuff. And it's starting to see like another proper boom period at least for the fans, maybe not for the mainstream. I don't know. I mean, wrestling has been on TikTok a lot, and I've heard it from a lot of people who've been paying attention. But in terms of the fans, it's been a very exciting time for the product. And like Tony Khan said in the press conference, he's been blessed with a second chance to have another big hot period, which he lost a while ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting. So yeah, we'll see you all next time, and fingers crossed we can have if someone could sponsor me to go to All In next year, that would be great. I'd love that. Bye bye.